Hey everybody, on here coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video and June. We're taking a look at what is happening around the world in June. What can we expect out of this in our world? What hot things might be coming up on that kind of geopolitical realm, and what the codes are showing for us that we may have to pay attention to or have to deal with. For those that don't know, I am the author of The Code Journey. You'll find me by my full name, Jessie on Nichols George. And The Code Journey is a daily guidebook for maneuvering through life on Earth. It's kind of a spiritual almanac. So even though I do address things with like geopolitical stuff or world events that are happening and the potential for things to happen in there, it's also a personal growth tool. So it's designed mostly as a personal growth tool, but it also helps us to identify things that are going to go on in our world. So make sure that you like the channel, subscribe, share out the video, especially if you like what you find in here. And this is a little different perspective. It's not really like a astrology perspective or things like that. It blends a lot of different modalities, what I do, but it allows me to tap into different times, points, places, and look at what the energy currents are that are present. And through doing that, it helps us to identify, for example, when people are going to be more reactive, when there might be more violence coming up in the world, or when things might be easier and flowing and working very well in the world. So it kind of gives us that heads up, because I know for myself, there's times where I look at the currents and it's like, oh, we do not want to be in crowds that are in protest or things like that, because it's going to turn deadly, or, it's going to get bad, or it's going to go violent. Matter of fact, that was just with our new moon codes recently, looking at that, and there was a lot of death energy that was coming up and accident energy. And sure enough, I'm looking at the news feeds, and it's like, yeah, this event that was going on that was politically charged, were riling people up into incidents, and all these people got hurt. And I'm not laughing at the people that got hurt, because I think these are very hard things to face sometimes, where um, people are innocent and they're going to these things thinking they're doing the right thing. But unfortunately, if we're going to them under the wrong currents, then we have some really big challenges with it. And there's points where the energy encourages us to speak up. It is the right times to get out there and speak up. And then, there's other points when the violence and the reactions and stuff are strong, that are just not good times to be out in that. And that's what I try to do in showing and sharing these energy currents for the month, of what's happening, so that you have that heads up to go, hey, oh yeah, this event's going on. Maybe I should or shouldn't. Or you can even just have that heads up prepared to understand maybe what more of the underlying pieces are. Around what's happening in the world, because I always find that interesting as well, to take a look. And especially when there's a lot of whether we talk about gaslighting or a lot of distortions or inversions or different things that are happening, where it's very hard to tell the truth. A lot of times I can look at the codes and go, oh, this type of energy is present. That helps me actually kind of know who's the good guys, so to say, and who's the corrupt people, based on what they're doing under the different energies that are present. So I hope that gives you maybe a little bit of background. And I don't write these things at the moment. This information is being pulled from my 2025 book. Every year I put out a new edition. And this is information I wrote a year ago. So I didn't know what was coming up on what date or any of that when I wrote the information in there. So I think hopefully that kind of gives people an interesting piece, because I always love it when I'm reading through it and I'm, going through a year that I written a year ago, and look back and go, wow, I actually I actually got that piece right. And it's eerie sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to be right, with some of the death things or the assassination pieces or stuff. I don't always want to be right about that, but it definitely does, like I said, give me more of an insight of where people are at based on what they're doing. And that's kind of helped me stay in the clear of knowing, what is going on. I've kind of gotten into this because I know a lot of my followers and people, they are in this area, so that's why I created a whole different video for it and a whole different channel for it in there. So, okay, sorry, my nose is itching already, as it always seems to do when I start these videos. But let's move on. What are our influences for the month? And our influences for the month, we've got a lot coming up where people are going to experience problems by association with corruption and criminals. So, for example, whoever is associated with the criminals, they might not be doing something wrong so much themselves, but they will have issues and challenges that will come up just because they're around them. So it would be like, if whoever, whatever, ex-president or whatever, uh, has has servants around them, has a chef, has, different things like that, then those people may take a fall just because they are employed by those people, just because they're around them. Family members might take a fall just because they're associated with them or connected to them in some way. So a lot of this aspect we want to be very careful of, and um, we have to kind of look at it. The people that are hanging around people who are corrupt need to take a close look at that. And this isn't just political figures. I mean, even in your own life, take a look at this and say, okay, what are the people around me doing? Like at work, for example, um, or even family in some cases, or friends, or, people that we hang out with. Are they doing things that are criminal or nourishing corruption or going down these bad paths? Because we may happen to just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then we get into trouble as well. It's like that, um, like just accomplice to something just because you're present in the situation. So we got to be very careful of that, and we have to take a look at that. So we are definitely going to see some falls. We're going to see some falls of people, um, just just because they've been supporting people that are corrupt in there. Looking for that. And what I think will happen with this is they'll kind of get weeded out, and it'll be they'll first get have some problems, but then they may be re-looked at and then released and said, okay, you're not really involved in this. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, sort of thing. Therefore, they'll get dismissed down the line, but it won't, there could be a lot of damage done before they get cleared of something in there. And again, it leads us to rethink, well, what do we need to be doing? If you weren't hanging around with criminals and corruption to start with, well, then you probably wouldn't have these issues. And it's going to make some of these people rethink things like maybe this isn't who I should be associated with in there. Okay. So, that's kind of like anybody who shows up to a PDA party. I think I can say that in this video. You know, you might be guilty just for showing up the party, whether you did anything or not in there. And I think that's the type of thing we're talking about with this. Okay, debt. Debt is going to be really huge. It's going to come into the limelight this month, and we're either going to move out of debt or we're going to move a lot further into debt. Um, Hopefully it's going to be the first, and that has to be a priority. So I'm kind of looking forward to June 2025 here to see, is there going to be some sort of announcement around this that is going to come up saying, look at all the debt that we've cleared. Um, I hope so. I hope there will be something coming out, or it looks like we are going to have X amount of debt released, because this is a huge thing that we want to see focused on as countries. No matter what country you're in, we do not benefit by being in debt, because when we are in debt, then that's when we are turning our power over. So, for example, if the US had a debt to China, for example, that means we're giving China a lot of power and influence over us through that debt. So, alleviating that debt becomes one of the biggest and top priorities that needs to be done. It's right up there with the human trafficking. It's right up there with, you know, all kinds of things that are very, very critical and important and things. It's right up there with, the stopping fentanyl and things like that from coming into the country and a variety of those things. So really looking forward, looking to seeing what's going to come out around that. And hopefully it's not going to be a lot worse, but even if we do get that message that comes through and says, yeah, we've gone a lot further into debt, there could be something more behind that. And that's the thing to keep in mind. It may be a temporary thing that we're going further into it instead of out of it. And that may be part of what needs to happen because, as we know, we're in a lot of deconstruction sort of time period where a lot of things have to break down, they have to fall apart. So sometimes you have to go more into something to break it down before you can come around and get a fresh new start and to rebuild in a favorable direction. It may be part of a crash that needs to happen. Um, I hope not. I'm hoping it's going to, again, be more like, okay, we're getting out of debt because if we are getting out of the debt, then we're bringing ourselves into a much stronger position in the world. That's going to affect a lot of financial things. So even looking at countries, we could probably, if you want, if you're one of those people that like to go out and dig information, I would take a look at this. Look at who has the greatest debt and the least debt out of countries in our world. And that's how you're really going to know who has the most power and who doesn't in the world, because that's a huge, huge indicator of that. And that's one of the things we've seen in the US. Our debt has just been accumulating so much and so hard, but I do know in some of these systems, sometimes they have to go further in so that they can do the crash that needs to be done to um, to bring new things in. So either way, I would not overly stress over it, but it is something that's going to be aware of, and we should pay attention to what they announce around that in there. Okay, there's likely to be attempts to provoke people into violence and get people into reactions. So we are definitely going to have the provocateurs out in June. We just saw something recently that was going on. I want to say it was New York, maybe. Sorry, can't remember exactly. But where there was a certain kind of protest that's going on. Well, we've seen some of this in Africa, actually. Trump was just calling this out in Africa, where they are creating and calling for all this violence against white farmers, saying that they are not true Africans, even if they've been there their whole life, even if they're like third generation, just because their skin color. So these are the pieces that we want to be very careful of, because these provocateurs, what they do is they invert a lot of things, they twist a lot of things, they turn the truth around, they shift things, they make the good seem bad, the bad seem good. A lot of times what they're trying to do is they want strife. They want upheaval because that's where they hold their power. That's where corruption holds its power. The more strife and upheaval it can keep going, then the more power and influence it has, the more it can hide the truth in things, because that's part of what they use as a distraction a lot of times. That's where we see these false flags and things come up, is because they go out and they do stuff to distract so that you don't see what they're actually doing. So we want to be careful of that. It's also, like I said, about preventing the truth from coming out. So if they can make somebody who is bringing the truth out to seem bad, then that may be a way for them to prevent the truth. Because if that person takes the bait, goes into reaction, then they use that reaction against them and say, see how violent they are? See how horrible they are? When they're really not. They're just tired of being poked and prodded and aggravated and all of those things. So we really have to be careful that we're taking action and not reaction. So if you're out of these places and you start to see the violence come up, that's not where you're going to want to be. But you do want to tap into the facts. You want to tap into uh, actual situations and then look at legal and ethical ways to handle things. And there's a lot of people we can do that. We can show up to our town meetings. We can show up to our state legislator meetings or different things like that. There's different things that the public has a right to be at, and they can go in and voice their opinion and state their opinion. A lot of these things are videotaped and recorded, so closed caption TV, things like that, that they will do. You can write letters. You can appeal to different places. So we want to stay focused on the action. We don't want to get wrapped up in this. And again, if you see these things being stirred up, they're a situation that you want to walk away from in there, um, and find the other paths to do it. But we need to be aware that they are happening. So if we're out and about someplace and we start to see these things going, it's like, okay, let's get out of here. And a lot of this stuff, when we talk about the people provoking stuff and initiating this stuff, a lot of those people are paid. A lot of them are paid, or they're extremist politicians who are having different areas that they've been drawing illegal funds on, making illegal money from, and they will come out and try to provoke people, saying, trying to convince people, oh, your rights are being taken away, or this or that. Um, the stories are endless in this. So again, you have to kind of look at the circumstances and the situations and just not let yourself get baited into this. But we are going to see this area, and there are going to be some pretty good uprisings that probably show up in June from this. Now, from June 1st to June 21st in our monthly influences, uh, we need to have a lot of responsibility and to deal with things. So it's going to be interesting. We want to keep our eyes on where is the responsibility coming. This is a time for these people we put into office to start taking action. This is a time to stop messing around saying, well, we're just going to make sure this is approved or that's approved or something like that, but they're still not taking the harmful things. This is a great time where we can hold these people accountable and step up and say, no, you need to be responsible for these other pieces as well. That being said, sometimes they have to start in one place and then build to the other pieces. They have to get certain things through. It's just like, I don't know, they always start with a small piece, whatever they want to do for better or for worse. They always start with a small piece that doesn't seem too significant. And then that kind of is like getting your foot in the door so that they can get onto the bigger stuff. But we need to hold people accountable. No more of this aspect of, well, we're looking at this, we're thinking about this. Maybe we will do that. We need to really step up and do and hold them accountable to be responsible and deal with things. We also need to realize our own abundance. Okay. And this is that share and take piece. And this is the core about caring for those in true need. It's about removing the freeloaders. So I think we're going to continue to see, whether it's Doge or some of these other places, pulling people off of the system. We're going to get more message about that. And putting more emphasis on caring for those people in need. So we're talking our seniors, our veterans. We saw some of this last month where part of this energy was in effect last month too. And there was stuff passed to support our veterans, to make some things better for our veterans. We're starting to get some of the tax cuts made, not all the ones we'd like probably, but definitely some of them are getting passed in there. So we need to nourish this true abundance in people, this opportunity for success in people. And granted, we can't ever force people to be successful or to take hold and have that success, but we can give them the opportunities to. It's that proverbial, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink type of thing. but if it's available, at least they have it available if they want it, type of thing. So I think this is going to be a big piece, and this aspect of if we are removing a lot of this freeloaders off of the system, we're going to have a lot more to give to the people who really need it. And I think that's the difference. I think a lot of people are not um, they're not upset over helping the people that need it or the seniors who paid into the system all their life, so to say, and now are drawing Social Security. That's not where people are upset. But when you've got a lot of people that are collecting money who are not legally eligible for that money or who don't even exist, who have passed away or who have, who are drawing on the system. They're not even citizens that are entitled to that money. They put nothing in, they haven't done it. Or you have people that are just like, well, I don't feel like working. Um, Drawing on the system, you're depriving the people who actually need it. And a lot of people who are on, Social Security and stuff, they're not drawing enough to really live on. I look at my Social Security. If I was to retire at the age of 62, which is very close for me, if I was to retire at that age, I would be drawing in just over $900 a month. Now, where I live, there isn't a place to live for that. I can go into maybe some of the senior housing or something like that, but that's not going to take care of my needs. I mean, that's just, it doesn't cover things. So I think we're going to see some shift in this. And this is another piece that we want to encourage of how do we get people who are truly in need to have the basics, to have the essentials, to have those be safe environments for them. It's just not right to put somebody who's 75 years old who can barely do anything into the same apartment buildings that there's a bunch of drug deals going on. And I see it. I see it because I see these people who are on the system who are perfectly capable of working. They don't have a problem working. They're making money off of drug dealing, but they are getting free housing. And there's even things set up where because they're doing drugs or things like that, they can get these different housing options. Well, I always say put them in a rehab situation. They don't, you know, it shouldn't be mingled in with the people who are just struggling. So I think that, and I'm sorry, this always happens every time I do this video. I don't know why. This particular one, my nose always starts itching. But when we do this, it's very important um, to take a look at this. And we do want to nourish the things that create true abundance. And we do want to open this door up. So we want to look for that. We also, during this time, have a lot of emphasis that's coming in on peace, kindness, working soul to soul, acts of compassion, clearing out past choices that we do make during this time are going to have a direct impact on the future, the direction that we go, the path that we're taking, and whether we have a favorable or unfavorable future. So we do really want to keep our eyes on the decisions that are being made by our politicians, by our leaders, what they're choosing. And that's going to give us a good amount of foresight of what path they're going to take us down in things. But we need to come in just person to person, this component of kindness. Okay. We've got to stop the division in here. And again, looking after those who are truly in need is going to be a huge thing. So I think there could be more peace deals coming. We might hear peace deals in June coming up. The energy is definitely a component to it. I think more people coming in saying, look, we may not run our countries the same way, but we can operate soul to soul. We can sit down and have some reasonable conversations and things. Those people who have the power and the strength, they have the ability to choose to operate on a soul to soul level. In other words, look, I don't want to see your country totally destroyed, but this is what we're going to need. And we understand this. Some of this is basic communication because if we talk to each other with violence, then we're going to stir up violence. If we talk to each other on a kind of more soul to soul level, like here's the reality, here's the way things are, here's what we can do. Um, now you're coming into a different realm where you can create peace, where you can create these different options in there. So, um, big thing in there. So we really got to watch the choices that we're making, and that our leaders are making, I should say. Now, from the 22nd through the end of the month, so that last week and a half in there, we want to look at things from different perspectives, looking at things from the other side of things. And this is a big part, again, to coming into harmonizing, settling differences, bringing peace about, is realizing the other side of things. Because I would say most people out there are only looking at things from one perspective, only the environmental perspective, only the economical perspective, only whatever perspective. And we need to look at it from different perspectives. And there's going to have to be a little bit of give and take. That is just the reality of things. Because if you only look at it from one perspective, you're going to create suffering someplace else. It's like I am very pro the environment and I want to see as much taken care of in the environment as is possible and within reason with things. But if you're telling me that 100,000 people have to suffer to save the lives of 5 animals, you're not within reason. I'm not pro-killing at all. I'm not there at all. But if you're saying it's got to be one or the other because you're only looking at it from one side or the other, then you're never going to find the solutions. But if you're coming at from the aspects of, well, okay, we have to save the 100,000 people over the 5 animals, but is there any option that we can create to still save those 5 animals? And there might be. The problem is we get so rooted in that we lock ourselves in that there's no options. And we remove the aspect of possibilities in there. So it's kind of like saying, well, no, those 5 animals have to reside on this 100 acres of land. We can't move them to the 100 acres next door. I'm sorry, but that's pretty much idiocy right there. So we have to look a little deeper into things. But unless we're willing to recognize where there is validity in the different viewpoints, we're not going to find those solutions. So hopefully we can do that. And this is going to be a big thing. We want to watch who is looking at the different sides, who is looking at the different perspectives. What does it look like from their point of view? And meditate, and mediate that. So I could definitely see that there might be things where somebody like Trump, he's a negotiator, right? He may be the great mediator between some of these different countries or people, but you can't take sides in it. Whoever's going to mediate the situations, they can't take sides one way or another. And they've got to realize that, look, I can mediate it. I can help you guys see each other's point of view, but ultimately you got to come to your own solutions. So I do think we have, given the other energy in the month and things like that, prior to that, I do think that these negotiations can come down, and I do think we can see some resolutions in it. A lot of power battle energy going on at this time, and that is the thing that could block things from coming through or block the peace treaties in there. These power battles are moving people to a controlled and deprived society is what they're moving into. And in these power battles, they want the people in general to go to a deprived and controlled society, but the people that are implementing these things want to keep their extravagant lifestyle. And, I've said this long before I ever started doing anything connected to political stuff, is I'll tell you what, you're asking for it, you go live it first, and you live under it, and then I'll take a look at it. But until you're willing to live under the very structure you're asking me to live under, it's a no-go in my book. Sorry. If you're not walking your talk, if you're not living it, forget it. Obviously, it's not good enough, and I'm not going to be able to do it. So we want to do that. And with this, what could happen in this that we could see is those that try to take that approach is they actually could lose power over this. So that could be the piece that creates a turnover in power. Um, and we want to clear out those who do not represent the people. So I think that this is going to be a good time where we can do that. So it's kind of like, well, if you don't want to make peace, if you're not willing to come into compromise somewhere, if you're not willing to find middle ground and harmonize with each other, then you're going to be out the door. If you're not going to represent your people, you're going to be out the door. And so we definitely could. And this is an interesting thing leading up to what some people call midterms or things like that, where there are going to be some elections going on. Those people who have been in position for a long time and they're not doing what their constituents want, what the people want, they're going to be out the door. So this is going to be interesting to watch. And then we're going to see a lot coming up around health and money issues in that last month. So I expect that means the spotlight's going to be on RFK and some of Junior and some of his people. Maybe we'll see something from the UN. I think there's some stuff getting stirred up around the UN or the WHO or something like that that might come up. And the issues that come up around that is all part of the change. What we want to keep in mind is some of this, again, can get a little scary. It can feel like ooh, that's not the direction I want to see things go in. But at the same time, we may see or need to realize that everything's in divine order. Everything's being redirected. So for some people, they're going to be saying, no, we shouldn't be abolishing this. We shouldn't be getting rid of this group or just dismantling that organization or whatever. But the reality of it is again, we're being redirected, and there is going to be a divine hand in this somehow. And staying open to that and staying open to realizing that. But again, we could also see an emergence of some illness during this time. So there could be something where they may try to, say, oh, this is surfacing. Oh, we've got some cases of this. And, that hasn't been working very well for them lately, but you never know. They're always trying. They're always trying. Even when they don't succeed, they're always trying. So health and money issues coming up. And again, I think that ties into that debt piece I talked about, where we may be looking at it. We may hear of countries that are just so far in debt, they're collapsing. And that could be something happening there. Actions, where our actions need to be focused. What types of actions do we need to stay on? What types of actions are going to be taken? And this, starting with the 1st through the 17th, we will see blessings in strife. This is an interesting thing, or we need to see the blessings in strife, I guess is another way to put that. In other words, it's strength through hardship. So we are probably going to have some hardships based on decisions that are being made, based on things that are being implemented, but that will be strengthening us. It's kind of like tightening your belt, right? It's kind of like reeling in that budget so that you can pay off the debt so that you can then go out and actually have fun and not worry about how much debt you're accumulating, that type of thing, or making you stronger, in that way. So it's strength through hardship. It's just like if you hit a physical challenge and you have to stop and deal with that, there's a certain strength that comes out of dealing with that. And that's kind of where we're at with it. So that's going to be a big piece. and teaching us and developing skills for success and learning from each other. So, what's interesting is the experiences that we're going to be going through are going to be teaching us a lot about how to be successful. So, sometimes, when you're on the path to success, you have a certain amount of trial and error that has to go on. You have to try something, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't work, you go back, you regroup, you make some adjustments, shifts, changes, whatever, and then you go out and you try it again. And some of these things that are coming down, it's about teaching us, look, here's how you ended up in debt, or here's how you ended up in this situation, or here's how this developed. And so now that you're experiencing it, you have an understanding of it. So now you know what you need to do and what you don't need to do. So a lot of things that are going to happen are not there to punish us. They're not really there to make our life miserable. They're there to teach us something. It's kind of like, sometimes you got to let a kid fall. Sometimes you got to let them get into a little bit of danger just to realize that's not the thing to do. And no, you never want to see them hurt. You know you're going to stop it before they really seriously get hurt or seriously in trouble. But sometimes that's what it takes, especially when people are not paying attention or not understanding things. It is part of the learning process. And if you don't fall, you don't learn to pick yourself up. So sometimes you have to fall to learn how to pick yourself up. Sometimes you have to fall to develop the strength, right? A baby doesn't just automatically have strength in their legs. They have to get up, they have to fall down, they have to get up, they have to fall down. All that getting up and falling down develops strength. And eventually they're like, oh, this is how walking goes. And then it's like, oh, now that I can walk, I can run. Well, when you look at these in political arenas and things too, it's the same sort of concept. It's like, okay, we gotta fall, we gotta go up and down a little bit before we get enough strength that we can hold things and stand up on our own and be self-sufficient. And then we'll be able to really take off and run. So I kind of look at this as a lot of prep work to a certain extent in there. Okay. Thoughts. Where is the mindset going to be in here? And I may have missed some pieces in there, but I don't think I missed much. I think a lot of it's the same in there. Um, on the action piece. I think that's the core piece. Thoughts. What are we doing on the thought range? Thoughts from the 1st through the 26th. So basically most of the month. A lot more open-mindedness going on. And again, this is going to be great for peace negotiations. It's going to be great for settling down where there are battles and wars going on. And again, for learning. It allows us to learn when we have an open mind. It allows us, again, to understand not just one piece, but multiple pieces that are involved in something. And this is going to help us to see through the narratives out there. So honing us in more to what the actual truth is with things. But we do have to be very, very careful during this time because some of the people who are so-called educating people are really put out. They're again probably paid components. Somehow they are profiting off of the corruption, but they will be false prophets, leaders, gurus, ministers, teachers. And these people are really predators. So they're using the spiritual image, whether that is the image of leading a church or the image of leading a spiritual movement or the image of being prophetic or whatever it is, but they're being paid by the corruption or they're getting some kind of kickback or some kind of donation in there. And they're just preying on people. I don't mean preying like praying. They're preying like predators on people to draw them in to these lies and these narratives, to be followers, because that's what these false prophets and gurus and teachers and people do is it's kind of a brainwashing technique, and it's all about getting people to just follow and turn over their power. So again, this is a programming because if people get used to it through something they trust, like spiritual paths or religion, or any of those methods, then it's just one step away to turning it over to government structures and other organizations in there. So looking at that very carefully is important. And we've got to be careful of that. We've got to discern because their whole point is to take advantage of us. The spiritual image is used to program, to betray, and to take advantage of us. And again, a lot of these people aren't even true people out there. So we've got to be very careful about them in this learning process. And then we need to really, there's going to be a big focus on needing to stop battling with each other. So again, this peace movement, this peace energy, what can we do to stop the wars? What can we do to stop the killing? And we've got to work as a team. We've got to harmonize. So there is, I think that's a very positive mindset that comes up of how do we harmonize here? How do we come to some agreements? How do we work out a deal? And I think, again, Trump is the big deal person. Whether you like him or not, he is excellent at making deals. And that is the thing that actually can stop wars, that can stop battles, that can save a lot of lives out there. So again, it doesn't matter whether you like him or not, he's probably going to be a key player in here. And this is going to be a very positive thing because when we learn how to harmonize and we learn how to stop battling each other, then everybody has the opportunity to have success. Everybody has the opportunity to create a good life. And that's going to be important. From the 27th on, we're going to see a lot of hidden things rise to the surface. So we might see more files appear. That might be like, oh, look at these new UFO files we found, or oh, look at these new, Kennedy and assassination files we found, or oh, look at these new files we found. So we might have some files that seem to suddenly appear. I'm not sure if it's so sudden, but but they might, it might come out. That might be the story. And part of that might be a narrative because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, we don't believe that Epstein hung himself. We don't believe these things. So I think we may see more of that, and that is going to expose agendas. Um, Sabotage stuff may be exposed more. So some of what these hidden files are that seem to show up will expose where there has been sabotage, where there has been agendas going on. And that I think is, again, some of what people are waiting for. I think it's not as much as what people may want. It may not always be as exciting or as big as they would like it to be. But remember, these are steps. It's like one step, one piece. Here's another piece. Here's another piece. And pretty soon it's like, it's the dam breaks sort of thing in there. This is going to be a time where there's going to be some thoughts going on in our world leaders of what risk can I take that will create a windfall that has a very high probability of taking off, uh, taking off or working out or things like that. What we have to be careful of is those that are willing to gamble on things that have very little chance of paying off. So we really want to take a look at here again, what are the decisions they're making? Because that is going to influence our future. And are they making these wise, calculated risks? Or are they taking ridiculous gambles on things that could just destroy people in there? So we got to be very careful. And a lot of this is going to depend on how power is being used. And what are people using power for? Are they using it for more power and control? Or are they using it to create suffering? Or are they using it to bring peace? And people will rise and fall based on how they're using their power. So again, this is another time it can feel turbulent, it can feel chaotic, it can feel a lot of things. But when we look at it in the end, it's actually a very positive thing that's coming around. Okay. Success from effort and caring. So where we put a focus, if they will put a focus, whoever is in charge, these people, again, this ties in with the other pieces about health, right? Coming forward. if they will put a focus on truly improving quality of life and making that a priority and cleaning up things. So, yeah, if they'll put an emphasis, maybe they come out and they say, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to here's how we're implementing getting the water systems cleaned up. Here's how we're implementing stopping chemicals being sprayed in the air. Here's how we're cleaning up our food system and give people actual practical steps that they're implementing. And here's the direction we're taking. Here's what we're thinking in things. Then we are likely to see success coming from that. But the effort has to be put in there. So if they're just spewing out words, but they're not doing anything, then, there's not going to be success. But if they're actually backing that thought and that train of area and those decisions with actual effort, then we can see some beautiful successes that will lead to a lot of abundance, that will alleviate a lot of suffering, a lot of hunger for people, things like that, which will be very, very important in things. But, for so long in a lot of the different administrations that have been running things, they've been talking all of this climate change, all of this stuff to help the environment, but they haven't been actually doing any action on that. They've just been using it to move a lot of funds around. And, they talk one thing like, we got to do this for the environment, but then they go and they spray chemtrails where they're destroying the environment. So the money didn't actually go to that. They didn't actually take the steps to put the money into what actually benefited the environment. So got to look at some of these different things and look at, okay, where are they putting things? And is the choices that they're making actually improving quality of life? Because quality of life is very, very important, especially in these days and times. No matter what you deal with, quality of life is very important. Whether you live to 20 years old or you live to 200 years old, quality of life is the key for a lot of people. So that's nature's way. That's God's way, if you want to say that, is to have quality of life for as long as we're living. Okay, on the soul energy, and this is always important, even in world events and things like that, because the soul energy is that's the heart and soul of things. That's the caring piece. That is the piece that keeps us going and able to handle things in the world and to do things and to put forth the effort and all of that. So the soul energy is really the spirit. Where are people's spirit at? Are they feeling good about things? Are they feeling like things are headed in the right direction? Are they happy about their life? Or do they feel like their life is really going up completely in the wrong direction? Is their spirits low, are they feeling depressed or things like that? So the soul energy from the 1st through the 6th, so just the first week of the month, what we see coming up in there is a lot of partnerships that can bring benefits, or they may expose networks of corruption. Either way, we could see it in there. But the partnership energy is a very strong soul energy in there. Our soul energy is craving positive partnerships in there. And this is one of the things that can help keep people inspired right now. If they see positive connections and not just corrupt networks of people, and those positive partnerships actually start improving quality of life, for example, then that is going to be a positive thing. That is a area that we want to put our energy into. Can we shift some of these people who have been working for the corruption? I think it's possible. I think some of that is possible. And you say, well, if you want to keep your company, if you want to keep doing your business, I know you're very good at what you do, then let's put your energy into something positive instead of all of these damaging and destructive things in there. So creating a positive existence, and we must consider what is ethical and humane. And this is a big, big piece in here, just kind of like I was saying, weighing out things. Is it ethical and humane to give up 100,000 lives for 5 animals? These are very tough decisions. Some people might say, well, that depends on the animals that, you know, in there, but we have to consider this piece. And this is part of the soul piece in this first week is what is ethical and humane? Like, okay, we could go in and we could stop this war and just blow everybody to pieces, or somebody could drop a nuclear bomb, that's it. But is that the ethical and the humane way to do it? No, it's not the ethical and humane way. So we have to consider that. So how do we stop the war in an ethical and humane way? So a lot of that piece in that first week is really going to come to the surface, and we're going to be learning a lot about that. Like, okay, maybe this is the reason we can't just push forward as fast as we want on something, because we've got to consider ethics and humanity in it. We've got to figure out what is the humane way to handle things, not just what will work. Because you might have 5 or 6 things that work, but what's actually humane and what's actually ethical in that process. And then from the 7th through the end of the month, we have a lot where we need to evaluate situations in there. So what we're going to see again, this discernment piece, like we saw with the false prophet stuff, at parts of the month in there, in the thought processes, but really evaluating what are the different components. Because again, you cannot make a wise decision about what to do if you only look at things from one side. You've got to look at the different perspectives, the different sides, the different components and things. Otherwise, you're not making a wise decision. You're just basing things off of one opinion, one side, one component, one aspect. And that is not going to lead to wisdom. That is not going to lead to the best path forward 99.9% of the time. Okay. So really evaluating the different components that are at hand. That means that, again, you can't just rush in there with action. We've got to really consider what will happen. If one action is taken, what does that set into motion? If another action is taken, what does that set into motion? And this is going to be a time of fleshing out a lot of lies, deception, and manipulation. So that means the soul energy or divine presence will increase. If we're fleshing out lies, deception, and manipulation, that means we're moving a lot more into truth and integrity. So that's going to raise a certain amount of spirit or vibration on the planet as a result of that. That is going to open up more soulful energy to come about. And that's going to be, I think, a huge thing. Again, corruption has allowed the lies, the deception, the manipulation to get away with things. And so it's been okay to be that. But at some point, the parents got to step in and say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And not in, a truth ministry, whatever sort of way, like they tried to implement previously. In there, which is really about controlling speech and stuff, but it's really about helping people to see the truth, because people need to have choice. But do you have choice if you're not working from the facts and from truth? You don't really. And that's what a lot of people found, like with the pandemic and different things like that. They were not given the truth about a lot of things, and therefore they couldn't make truly wise choices. And that led them to follow narratives. So that's going to be interesting. This is going to be a time of bringing a lot into integrity. So again, that is the soul piece. When we bring things into integrity, we're increasing that soul energy. What we do have to be careful of is temptations. And temptations are showing us our vulnerability and our loyalty. So if we can easily resist temptations that are not favorable for us, that pull us away from the God, divine source energy, then we are showing a loyalty to that soul energy. We're showing a loyalty to God and divine source, and that is going to strengthen us. That is going to lead us down paths of success. If we give into the temptations, it's like making a deal with the devil, as they say. If you give into the temptations, then we're going to lead ourselves down much harder paths. So we need to really watch what is happening there And we've got to be very careful because there could be some things that come up that seem very tempting and very appealing, and they're appealing to our human self, but they're not good for us. It's like that plate of desserts or whatever. It's really appealing to the human self, but we know it's not good for us. And if we ate that whole plate, we would probably not feel very good. Same kind of component in there. Also, in this energy, we could see a lot coming up around addictions, maybe cleaning up addictions. So we could see maybe more happening on the front of cracking down on things like fentanyl or other drugs coming into the country, or drugs that are used on things that might be exposed and brought out more during the month of June, because that all plays in with these temptations, which is also a sort of trying to escape facts, reality, truth, things like that, not wanting to deal with things in the world. So anything in the drug arena could also come up under this energy. And if we have more crackdowns, more bust, more things happening around that, again, that's going to raise the spiritual vibration, and that's going to move us more towards the God divine source energy currents than away from them, which will be very good. And then breaking illusions. So this is going to be a time of a lot of illusions where a lot of people thought, hey, I could trust these people or these organizations, and they're going to find out they haven't been telling us the truth. They're not people we can trust in things. So definitely another big piece for us to consider in there if you're paying attention in there. So that's what I've got for this month. Again, share this out, like, subscribe the channel. I put a video out every month, but I also put videos out that are more self-help on my regular channel. I'm posting on social media all the time, putting things out. So um, feel free to reach out to me. Uh, I've got a lot of different things going on. I'm going to be heading into Vermont 4 times, doing events over there and taking private session work. But you can check out some of the things I do on my website, which is compassioncodes.com. If you'd like to check that out, go ahead over there and you'll see a variety of things. Sign up for the newsletter as well. That'll kind of keep you updated on some of the basic things in there. But yeah, I always appreciate the support I can get. I don't monetize. I'm not making big bucks. I'm not having sponsors and commercials and things like that and uh, anything like that. But I do appreciate the support, and I do appreciate you helping other people to become aware of what we're dealing with so that they're not falling into some of the traps of illusions and lies and deceptions and manipulation and all of those things. That they can start to sort out and discern the truth with things that are happening. And that's really the key of this. It's not about predicting an event on a certain day, but it's about understanding the currents so that we're not getting trapped by things that are happening, and so that we can see through and see who is on course in those positive divine alignments then and who isn't along the way. So that is where it is. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a great month, and I will catch up with you at the end of next month.